Why did we win? There are a bunch of reasons. We had great candidates. They had flawed candidates. As I mentioned, the American people really began to worry that this MAGA group was controlling the Republican Party and our democracy was at risk. But the other reason we won is we talked about things people cared about: reducing the cost of prescription drugs, finally dealing with climate, student debt. Young people voted more heavily than people thought because of those issues. And so we won, and I hope I can convince my non-MAGA Republican colleagues in the Senate. The reason we won is we got something done on issues.
39 past the hour. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on our show earlier this morning. On Saturday night, we learned he will remain Majority Leader when the Nevada Senate race was called for Catherine Cortez Masto. She was long considered one of the most vulnerable Democratic incumbents, but narrowly defeated her Republican challenger, Trump-backed Adam Laxalt. Joining us now, CEO of the Nevada Independent, John Ralston, also with us, national political reporter, director for Indivisible Project, Maria Urbina. Thank you both very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much. You know, John, I always told Republicans that Pennsylvania was fool's gold, right? And it was, until I said, you know what, we always go in, we always pull out at the end. I've said the same thing about Nevada, that somehow, some way, Democrats always pull out victories in Nevada. I started saying it when everybody said Harry Reid was going to lose, I believe, in 2010. I was like, no, he's not. I've never seen a state as wired as Nevada. And I just got to say, it's something that you understood when people were actually attacking you for just telling the truth about where this election was going.
Yeah, well, you got to put up with trolls, Joe, as you well know. You probably ignore them the same way that I do. And, you know, it's too bad that people just don't want to look at reality. And the fact is what you just said. Listen, this is a very close race, but there have been close races before. But the Democratic machine, the so-called Reid machine in Nevada, is unparalleled. And just because the senator passed away last year doesn't mean that the machine suddenly disappeared. The people pulling the levers of that machine are still around. And what they were able to do for Catherine Cortez Masto, and by the way, Joe, also saving 3 House seats here that were considered targets by the Republicans, and Democratic incumbents won all of those. It is a remarkable machine, and it's still there.
Yeah, and by the way, that was, correct me if I was wrong, if I'm wrong, you got the senator's race, correct? But weren't you even surprised that all 3 Democrats won those 3 seats in Nevada?
I was, Joe. I thought Susie Lee, who was in the swing district in Nevada and had a very credible candidate, not one of these MAGA nuts or election denier nuts running against her, I thought that she was going to lose. And by the way, I think many Democrats thought that she was going to lose. But the power of that machine put her over the top, as it did the other Democratic incumbents, Dina Titus and Stephen Horsford. And so Susie Lee had a ton of media run against her, Joe. Really, really nasty stuff. She created some of her own problems, but she managed to survive. And by the way, the Democrats are also going to make gains in the legislature here in a year in which a red wave was predicted quite confidently by a lot of Republicans.
It really was. They were extremely confident. Maria Urbina, you're looking at Catherine Cortez Masto's story, and you say her story is Nevada's story. Explain.
Well, Senator Cortez Masto is Nevada's story because she's the daughter of a Latino. She's a daughter of a union worker. She comes from a working class family. And I want to note that I totally agree with John. Listen, I was on the 2010 race in Nevada working under these machine women, right? I worked under Shannon. I worked under Mariela. And I learned then that Nevada is unique and many times the national reporting is lopsided. Folks underestimated Senator Cortez Masto, and she delivered. She also delivered the Latino vote, outperforming President Biden there.
Maria, no, you were part of the Reid machine that's still working. You mentioned some of the people that in Nevada they're still working. Rebecca Lamb, of course, who was a long-standing Harry Reid star. Rebecca Kirshner-Katz, who came from the Reid operation and was senior advisor for strategy for the Fetterman campaign. So, the legacy clearly lives on as having a huge impact. I know that at your project you did a lot of work canvassing, knocking on doors, getting young people out to vote. What lessons do you take away from that experience and actually talking to young voters, particularly voters of color?
Sure. So I have two lessons learned. And one is that, especially in Nevada, it's a purple state. It's a tough state. You have to have a broad coalition. And Senator Cortez Masto assembled that. The other piece to remember is that the nonpartisan vote continues to grow, continues to be sizable. Indivisible Northern Nevada did all of their canvassing in Washoe County, which is a critical battleground county that Senator Cortez Masto delivered. And so it's going to be important that as Democrats compete statewide there, they continue to talk to those voters. The other piece I want to add, just kind of more broadly, is we were talking about GOP extremism from the beginning. In terms of being part of a grassroots community, you can often be on the early side of either setting trends or shifting them. And when Roe happened, I heard from indivisible leaders all across the country talking about that the stakes were higher, that what they were hearing at the doors was different than what they were hearing in the news, that folks were scared about democracy. And we went on offense. We put out a guide that was pushing people to go on offense against GOP extremism, and it proved to be a really helpful strategy this cycle.
John, Senator Reid was an unflappable guy, tough guy, skilled at defining his opponent, a very disciplined guy. What elements of Harry Reid, the discipline of the campaign, defining the opponent, what elements, if any, did Senator Cortez Masto use against Adam Laxalt?
Well, that's a great question, Mike, and you can see that she was influenced by Harry Reid, who anointed her to replace him when he left in 2016. Her media against Adam Laxalt, defining him as this child of privilege who didn't grow up in Nevada, essentially came back to Nevada to run for office as an election denier and as someone who said, and they use this over and over again, Roe versus Wade was a joke. She showed all the instincts of her mentor, and another one that she showed that I don't think people really understand is her fundraising ability. Harry Reid was one of the best fundraisers in the history of this state. She really outraised Laxalt. Now, of course, there was a lot of outside money that tended to overwhelm that, but she raised a ton of money, and that allowed her to keep those commercials I just referred to on the air throughout the election.
All right, CEO of the Nevada Independent, Jon Ralston, and National Political Director of Indivisible Project, Maria Urbina. Thank you both very much for your insight this morning.